Mr. President, this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 507. This resolution pertains to the planned phase out of all traditional jeepneys by June 30, 2023. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, I hear none. Therefore, the motion is approved. May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Resolution expressing the sense of the Senate to strongly urge the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board to postpone the planned phase-out of all traditional jeepneys by June 30, 2023, pending the resolution of valid and urgent concerns raised by affected operators and drivers regarding the financial viability of the program.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize the distinguished lady from Pangasinan, Iloilo, and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Grace Poe, to deliver her sponsorship speech.
The distinguished lady Senator, Senator Grace Poe, Chairperson of the Committee on Public Services, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, hinihingi ko ang suporta ng buong Senado para prenohan ang tinakdang phase-out ng mga hari ng kalsada sa darating na ika-30 ng Hunyo 2023. The planned phase-out is yet another sordid chapter in the PUV modernization program. I can say this with certainty as I chaired the committee hearings which have generated enough transcripts to fill a jeepney. But to make the long story short, the PUV modernization program seeks to compel existing jeepney operators to consolidate and form fleets of 15 modern jeepneys, which will file routes established by local government units. Each modern jeepney costs 2.8 million pesos, which will be loaned and paid out of pocket. To speed up the policy, the LTFRB unilaterally converted all existing jeepney franchises into one-year provisional authorities. It is the most recent memorandum circular 2023-13, the LTFRB imposed the deadliest deadline. Jeepney operators who have not joined an existing consolidated entity by June 30, 2023, or those who fail to file a petition to consolidate by October 30, 2023, will have their franchises revoked. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the LTFRB should be reminded that jeepney drivers do not have deep pockets. The most recent study estimates that the average daily take-home pay is a meager 755 pesos. Somehow, the LTFRB still expects a gold mine of capital to the tune of 2 million pesos per unit. Hiwalay pa ang cost just to consolidate. A news article estimates that jeepney operators must put up 300,000 pesos in paid-up capital just to register as a transport cooperative. And here's the kick. The equity subsidy provided by the government is a measly 160,000 pesos, not a million, 180,000. Wala pa ito sa 7% ng bagong unit. Ginoong Pangulo, 4 na beses na nag-extend ang LTFRB ang kanilang deadline. Pero kahit kailan ay hindi naman nasagot ang mga reklamo sa programa tungkol sa subsidiya para sa equity ng mga bagong unit. To quote a recent study on the PUV modernization program, it has been too focused on vehicle replacement. Sequencing in the implementation of the PUVMP is very critical. It could have started with regulatory reform, local route, formulation and submission, and route rationalization first before embarking on fleet modernization. This would have given stakeholders better appreciation of the program, an additional grace period, and more time for the operators, drivers to prepare. To implement this program, we need route rationalization. Taon-taon, tuwing nanghihingi ng budget para sa PUV modernization, ay hinihingi natin ang route rationalization plan. But DOTR just entered a 3-year technical cooperation project with JICA in June 2022, only 5 years after the program was launched. Part of the JICA outputs is database of traffic volume as the basic information for the route rationalization plan in Metro Manila and assessment of existing and future routes of PUVs. Based on their 2023 budget submission, the route rationalization studies are still being finalized. Wala pa nga yun eh. Wala pang mga ruta na maaari nating sabihin. Bakit pinapahirapan ang mga driver at commuter kung hindi pa nga nagagawa ng gobyerno ang pag-aaral na ipinangako nito? To enforce a deadline is not only insanity but also inhuman. Hindi makatao, Mr. President. It is contrary to the constitutional directive to promote social justice in all phases of national development. It is also contrary to the public welfare, as it will compound the acute shortage of public transportation modes in the country. Tignan na lamang natin ang pila tuwing rush hour, naghahabulan. Kulang tayo sa tren as the MRT3 is operating beyond capacity. The reported PNR shutdown to speed up construction of the North-South commuter rail will leave us its 180,000 daily passengers without a ride for at least 5 years. Kulang tayo sa bus as seen in the long queues even on the weekend. Pahirapan at tagaan din ang presyo ng Grab. Pero parang bingi ang LTFRB sa kabila ng paghihirap na dinaranas ng mga commuter at drivers. If the LTFRB proceeds with the phase-out, it might result to 50,000 jeeps being taken off the road. If transport groups proceed with their strike, that's at least 40,000 jeepneys off the street starting March 6. And speaking of social justice, we have a pending bill which seeks to provide a just and humane transition to the PUV modernization program. We are not against modernization. If anything, we want to make it easier to achieve. There's always a win-win solution, and that begins with a united stand from the Senate. We thus move for its adoption of proposed Senate Resolution number 507, Mr. President. Thank you.
May I, before we recognize, may I just ask a few fundamental questions to our author of the sponsor, or sponsor of the measure? Just a few clarificatory questions to my distinguished colleague. With the permission, of course, of the body. Are you willing, ma'am, to ask?
Yes,
Thank you. Just
yes,
to ask,
President.
when was because I've been hearing the modernization program from my first term in the Senate in 2007. Itong date na March, was that March, is it June? June 30?
June.
Has that been extended already several times?
Yes, Mr. President. It's been extended. Remember, this was a proposal back in 2017, and
Yes.
they were saying that they had about a year after that. But then, Mr. President, based on their proposal, was also a submission of a route rationalization plan. In short, yung mga ruta ng mga jeeps, para hindi yung sa isang lugar na napakaraming jeeps, sa iba naman kulang. So this was in conjunction with their cooperation with the local government. Hanggang ngayon, wala pang ang route rationalization plan. So ang gusto nila, i-modernize na ninyo, pero wala pang garantiya ng ruta at magbabayad pa sila para sumama sa kooperatiba.
May I share some information because I used to be the chairman of the Committee on Cooperatives. So I would attend several, my vice chairman is nodding her head, Senator Hontiveros. We would have several meetings, Madam Sponsor, with transport cooperatives. The problem is the local government units, because I spoke also to the LTFRB. The problem is the local government units, siguro magugustuhan to ni Idol Rafi, ayaw nila magbigay ng route rationalization plan, which has to be approved kasi by the local government unit before it is actually given to the drivers. Because apparently, what I was told, no, and I don't shoot the messenger, I was told that there are local government units who also want to operate themselves. In other words, may mayor na gusto din maglagay ng mga modern PUV na buses, may councilors na gusto din nilagay dun sa mga lugar nila, kaya hindi nila nabibigyan hindi na-release yung ating route rationalization plan. So kawawa talaga itong mga jeepney drivers na ito dahil ang kalaban na nila is modernization, yung malaking gastos sa jeepney. Tapos, ang kalaban pa nila, ang local governments na gustong isarili, no? Hindi ko sinasabi lahat. Merong mga local governments gusto nilang i-monopolize din para sa kanilang whatever, no, for whatever reason or rhyme or purpose. So, the point here being is the good sponsor wishes that so that our dear colleagues in the Senate know, our good colleague here wishes that we postpone until there can be some sort of cushioning on the part of the jeepney drivers who cannot come up yet with the modern jeepneys by June 30. How long does the sponsor believe we could give them in terms of postponement? Because we cannot naman open-end it, Madam Sponsor, because we also want to see our roads modernized from the old 50-year-old jeeps that ply the routes. So do you envision, Madam Sponsor, a particular point in time, a period in time where we can actually facilitate the full PUV modernization program?
Mr. President, it's very difficult to give a timeline if the submission of the route rationalization is not does not materialize.
Chicken or the egg scenario.
Because actually, there is a study that was given by JICA with regards to this, and they need to study that proposal of JICA first. Now, as you're concerned about the local government units not agreeing to cooperate,
I hear the bottlenecks are there.
yes, I think that the OTR has to be more proactive, and they should release a statement that this is our problem. Because if this is so, then I think the executive can intervene already in this case. And
Which will make me go to my next clarificatory question, ma'am. Is there a law that mandates that the road rationalization plan must be coming from the local government unit? Because if there's a law, we really cannot disregard the local government unit. But if there is an order, an administrative order, or an EO of some sort, that can be amended. So would you know the answer if there is a law that mandates they come from the local government?
Mr. President, I think our good former governor from Sorsogon can talk, is more an
Yes, our
authority.
distinguished
Yes.
colleague, the former governor, now Senator Francis Escudero.
Yes, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. When I was governor, I think we were the only province in the Bicol region that had a route rationalization plan approved. The bottleneck actually exists with respect to tricycle drivers because under the law, jeepneys are under the LTFRB, tricycles are under the local government unit. And a route rationalization plan must include both. In fact, even including buses. Taking into account the size of the road, the distance of the schools, and other factors to be considered. So insofar as the route rationalization plan for jeepneys are concerned, the DILG can issue a corresponding memorandum to local chiefs of executive to actually finish it insofar as jeepneys are concerned.
Yes.
But if you're talking of the entire and comprehensive route rationalization plan, it should include both buses and tricycles.
So maybe the good solution to that would be the DILG, we should also urge the DILG in this resolution to come up with a deadline as suggested by a dear colleague from Sorsogon, so that they can move to the next step, which is the modernization.
Mr. President, that's also a problem because there is no support. When we came up with it, we had to hire our own experts. There was no available expert from DOTR, LTFRB that could teach us exactly what a route rationalization plan would look like, what it would entail, what it should contain. Wala pong ganun eh. But not only the route rationalization plan, Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, there's also a problem of financing. Each of these modernized jeepneys cost at least 2.3 million. Pag tinanong mo ang LTFRB, pinakamalaki nilang bibigay na subsidy ay 200,000, minsan 100,000, depende pa sa probinsya. Paano nila babayaran yung amortization? If the amortization is computed about 60,000 pesos to 70,000 pesos at least, agad wala nang kita. If you compute the number of seat and seating capacity of these jeeps and the monthly amortization, wala na agad. Clearly 100,000 will not suffice. Clearly 200,000 will not suffice. And you were mentioning cushion a while ago. Clearly also there are no safeguards whatsoever with respect to drivers and including operators who will be displaced because of this supposed modernization. And this modernization, Mr. President, did not even go through the usual process. The Philippines is known for its jeepneys. And all of a sudden, overnight, they want to phase it out and replacing it with these square-looking buses from China and Russia. The experience of Sorsogon, Mr. President, is not so good because about half at least, about 60% if in fact, are already unusable after less than 2 years. Kinakahuyan na lang po ng pyesa yung mga hindi na magamit. Kasi wala namang available na spare parts eh. Kasi yung mga pinoprovide nilang bus at pamalit ng mga jeep, wala, hindi naman Toyota, hindi naman Mazda, hindi naman Mitsubishi, wala namang spare parts na available sa Banawi o kung saan-saan. Galing lahat sa kanila at hindi namin alam kung saan galing. And these are being spoon-fed, I'm being polite, to the cooperatives. Ang dagdag pahirap pa sa jeep, Mr. President, as you discussed kanina with Senator Risa, kailangan mo sumama sa kooperatiba, otherwise hindi ka kasama sa programa. Saan naman yun? Saan naman nakalagay yun?
Well, if I may, no, to elucidate further the issue on the route rationalization plan. Sa maraming hindi nakakaalam, kailangan po nila yun kasi as mentioned by yourself, the good sponsor, they have to know which route is the most profitable route. Kasi kung nalagay po sila sa outskirts ng city or ng town, hindi po sila kikita. Ang gusto nila makita, yung route rationalization plan sa loob ng, as you mentioned, near schools, near public places, dapat dumaan sila doon. Now, chicken or the egg scenario, ayaw nila mag-modernize kung walang route rationalization plan. Ang problema pa, and I recall this very well because we had 3 hearings about transport co-ops with Senator Risa. The big problem is the banks don't also want to lend them without an approved route rationalization plan. Kasi okay na po yung DBP at Land Bank. Kausap namin yung DBP at Land Bank at sabi nila, Sir, may pera po kami. Mandate po namin ni Duterte administration na gawin ito. Ang problema nga, hindi nila ilalabas yung pondo kung walang route rationalization plan. So, ang ibibigay sana ng LTFRB, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Sponsor, na 200,000 or 160,000 to 200,000, para sa down payment po yun sa Land Bank. Pag na down payment na po yan, ang babayaran na nila yung monthly amortization ng kooperatibo or ng individual driver. So, we're stuck to this point that without a route rationalization plan, they cannot avail of the loan, nor can they move forward to modernize. Kasi hindi po nila alam kung yung ruta nila ay magiging sagabal ba sa kanila o kikita po sila sa ruta na yun.
Mr. President,
More or less, that's the picture that was painted to me,
Mr.
and shown to me.
if I may add, with regards to that, you were asking what is a reasonable time frame.
Yes.
And because we are discussing route rationalization, the study of JICA, which will be submitted, as mentioned by the former governor from Sorsogon, some provinces cannot afford to fund the study. JICA will not have their proposed rationalization plan until 3 years after it commenced in 2022. So reasonably, we can expect 2022, 2023, or 2025 pa.
Or
Natatapos.
maybe without having to put a timeline, what you could say is the postponement until they comply with the route rationalization plan.
I think so.
Mr. President, sige.
Mr. President, just to end it, may I at the proper time ask that this discussion, on top of approving or adopting the resolution filed by Senator Grace, be referred to the Committee on Public Services, as this, I believe, needs an in-depth hearing on the matter so that all sides can be heard, and so that the striking jeepney drivers or those who are planning to strike next week, perhaps if given a forum, might hold it off as well, because in a strike,
agree.
nobody really benefits from it, both the riding public as well as the drivers themselves. Thank you, Mr.
At the
President.
proper time, we'll do so.
Thank you. Mr. President, if I may, Mr. President, there's a list here. There's a long list, Mr.
Okay,
President,
Majority Leader, please proceed.
of,
Thank you.
senators
I'd like to
who
thank the
would
sponsor. Sponsor, thank you very much, Madam.
Who would want to manifest and say something, Mr. President?
Tama naman yan.
I'd like to put on record, Mr. President, my sincerest thanks and express our full support to this resolution filed by our distinguished colleague, Senator Grace po, urging the LTFRB to postpone the planned phase-out of all traditional jeepneys by June 30, 2023. Mr. President, I have been raising this issue for quite some time. I sound like a broken record, and Senator Grace po would attest to this. Every time she would come up with a hearing, for the past 6 years, Mr. President, I have been sounding this off, Mr. President. And this is not the first time that we are raising this issue. We raise this every budget deliberations of DOTR, of LTFRB. Unfortunately, yung last budget deliberation, yung LTFRB chief na nag-commit po sa atin na wala na po ngayon, naging PCOO na po yata, if I'm not mistaken, siya na po yung head nun. We noted, Mr. President, that this representation had received so many letters of from constituents requesting for assistance because their PUVs were impounded after they were not able to pay their loans to modernize their PUVs. May mga iba naman po, hindi pa naman luma yung sasakyan nila pero pino-force sila na bumili ng modernized kuno na sasakyan na hindi naman humaayos, Mr. President. Ang masakit po dito, Mr. President, marami na po yung bumili ng modernized na sasakyan gaya ng experience ni Senator Chis sa Sorsogon, nangyari na rin po sa Bulacan. Ang dami-dami na po na narimata na rin ng bangko. Ang dami-dami na po na hindi nakabangon at hanggang ngayon, hirap na hirap sa buhay. Mr. President, during the pandemic, this representation made a plea to DOTR noon na magbigay ng tulong doon sa mga drivers, sa mga tsuper na nandun sa tinuro ko pa kung saan lugar, ano-anong mga cooperatives, etc., Mr. President. Hindi po sila natulungan. And now, they're being forced. And tama po si Senator Grace po. Doon po sa amin hanggang 2.4 million pa yung cost ng modernized jeepney. And Mr. President, this is not a joke. And ang problema, Mr. President, and I was about to mention this before Senator Escudero took the floor, ganun din po yung nagiging problema nitong route rationalization plan. Kahit po gusto nung LGU, wala akong mga experts eh. Yung mga mayors nagtatanong sa akin, paano namin matutulungan? Gusto namin gawin, pero walang tulong. DILG is pushing them na magkaroon ng route rationalization plan, pero wala rin naman pong suporta. Again, Mr. President, marami pong issue ito. At isa sa pinakamabigat na issue dito, kahit nasabihin mo magmo-modernize tayo, 2.4 million is not a joke. Saan kukuha ng pera itong mga kababayan natin na lugmok na, nahirapan, hindi pa rin natulungan nung nakaraang may pandemya? Mr. President, this is a matter of justice, especially if there are no clear assistance from the government. Yung threat to the livelihood of our jeepney drivers, especially as they are still recovering from the pandemic and are also grappling with high fuel costs, Mr. President. And this will also affect the mobility of millions of our kababayans who rely on public transport system. I also would like to put on record. I know it's not part of the resolution, but I'm glad that Senator Chis also made mention, and I'm supporting it, that the speech of distinguished lady from Pangasinan, Iloilo, and the Republic of the Philippines will be referred to her committee so we can hear this. Because come December 2023, yung mga utility vehicles naman ang ipe-phase out, Mr. President, kahit na okay pa na gamitin. At ang masakit po dito, Mr. President, binanggit ko na po ito ilang beses kay Senator Grace, dun sa Bulacan, po-force ka, dapat meron kang cooperative. Ipo-force ka rin, Mr. President, kung saan mo bibilin yung units. Wala kang ibang choice. Halatang-halata ito ng mafia to, Mr. President. O ngayon na natapos yung last administration, may bagong administrasyon, mga interesado rin, nagkukumahog po yung mga mafia doon na sila naman. So we have to do our part, and I'm glad that this came out today. I'm supporting the resolution. I'm supporting the conducting of hearing by the Committee on Public Services. We are not against modernization per se, Mr. President, but we're calling on LTFRB to be more considerate given the recent pandemic and the state of our economy, Mr. President. Napakaklaro, palpak po yung programa nila. Palpak, Mr. President. Palpak yung mga nakaraang programa. Palpak yung paggawa ng route rationalization program. Pinipilit gawin, walang eksperto, walang nakakaalam sinong gagawa, walang tulong ang pamahalaan. Tapos ngayon, magdi-decide sila on their own, Mr. President. So I'm hoping and praying that at the end of the day, we'll be able to help our kababayans, especially, Mr. President, yung mga nabiktima na paano silang babangon ngayon, Mr. President. And I'm glad na ngayon pinag-uusapan po natin ito sa bulwagang ito. With that, Mr. President, I end my manifestation and also ask that we recognize Senator Raffy Tulfo for his manifestation.
Mr. President, before that, I would like to respond to Senator Joel. Yes, I would gladly, I think that it's crucial that we hear this as soon as possible. So if the minority leader will agree for us, because usually there's a 3-day rule, but if we can rehear it by Thursday, hopefully we can come up with a resolution so that the strike will not push through by Monday next week. Normally, we will have the 3-day rule, but maybe we can hear by Thursday.
With the permission of the minority floor leader, and I don't see him violently reacting
Okay.
for that particular issue. It's a national concern because we would like to avert a nationwide strike.
Body. Yes, Mr.
With the
President.
permission of the body.
Yes, the body is agreeing, Mr. President, to the suggestion, and we are all one, Mr. President, in ensuring that we'll be able to help out in any way we can, Mr. President. At this juncture, Mr. President, may I move that we recognize Senator Raffy Tulfo, Mr. President. Next, Mr. President, is Senator Bato, Senator Tol, Senator Win, Senator Risa, Senator Pia, and Senator Jinggoy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Mr. President.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
We recognize
sir.
Senator Raffy Tulfo.
Praise po. I would like to commend you on your passionate and in pursuing this resolution for our hardworking jeepney drivers. Mr. President, ang bottom line dito sa nakikita ko ay salapi. May mga gustong kumita. Una-una na dyan. They're now salivating. Tumutulo ng laway nito mga taga-LTFRB na atat ng kumita ng mga pilak. God knows who does not pay. Alam niyo po yung sa jeepney? Nakalagay, God knows who does not pay. Maraming mga hudas. Yes, na gustong yumaman. Gustong tumiba-tiba. At the expense of the mga pobreng jeepney drivers. Just imagine, 2.4 million po ang halaga ng yung modernized jeep na sinasabi nila. At 300,000 naman po ang mabibigyan na subsidy. So 2.1 million po ang kailangang pagbabayaran ng mga jeepney drivers. Alam naman po ng mga taga-LTFRB kung magkano lang po kinikita ng isang jeepney driver sa maghapon. Ang marami sa kanila hindi pa nga po makabuo ng boundary. Ang ilan sa kanila kahit isang tuka dahil nga po mahina ang kita. Pagkatapos kakargahan ng 2.1 million pesos na poproblemahin babayaran, ang kakapal na mga mukha nito mga nagtutulolaway ng mga taga-LTFRB. At tama kayo, Mr. President, I agree with you. Yung mga taga-LGU, kanya-kanyang diskarte. Ayaw magbigay ng rota dahil gusto nila sarilinin yung rota, kailan dumaan sa kanila. I have so many experiences, hindi naman po lahat. Ito mga taga-LGU, gustong kumita. Hinuhuli po yung mga jeepney drivers. Hinuhuli po yung mga tricycle sapagkat gusto nilang magkaroon ng sarili nilang unit. Gusto nilang maging mga operators. Marami din sa mga taga-LGU, again, hindi naman po lahat na mga loko-loko, unfortunately. Sa halip na kaawa ng kanilang mga constituent, mga taong bumoto sa kanila, yung pang kanilang mga ginigipit. FYI, mga taga-LTFRB, ang jeepney po ay parte na ng ating kultura. As a matter of fact, ang mga taga-ibang bansa, pinupuri po ang ating mga jeepney. At ginagamit po ito bilang tourist attraction sa kanilang lugar. Ipinagmamalaki ang jeepney natin. Pagkatapos tayo, ipipace out natin ang ganun-ganun na lamang. Ang kakapal na mukha nito mga taga-LTFRB. Ang kakapal na mga mukha nitong ilan mga taga-LGU. Hindi nag-iisip. Ang tanging iniisip lamang po nila, Mr. President, ang kanilang bulsa. And adding insult to injury, saan galing? Saan manggagaling itong mga jeepney? Galing ng China. Na kung saan, itong mga taong ito, ang hanggang ngayon, even while we speak, ay tuloy-tuloy na inapi ang ating mga mangingisda. Pagkatapos sa nating mga ngisda, tutulungan natin sila na para kumita, pagkakitaan, ang mga jeepney drivers. Para kumita, ang mga INUTIL ng mga taga LTFRB. Mr. President, baka marami pa akong masasabi. Bago ako ma-high blood, ang sasabihin ko lang, LTFRB, maghunos dili kayo. Dahil kapag hindi, pareho tayong sasabog, believe me or not. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my distinguished colleague.
Just a reaction. Thank you, Senator Tulfo, for your passionate speech. I know that you feel for the least of our countrymen. Alam niyo po, tama yung sinabi din ni Senator Cheese at ni Senator Tulfo. Pag itong mga binibiling mga modernized jeep na to nasira, wala namang mga dealers na yan dito eh. So yung mga parts, pahirapan ng pagkuha. Naalala niyo yung mga Mahindra noon?
Of course.
'Di ba? Naging problema din 'yan, 'di ba? Bakit tayo nagse-settle sa ganon? So, yun nga, parang merong gustong kumita. Kaya sa hearing, gusto ko rin matanong, sino ba ang nagbibigay ng accreditation sa mga kooperatiba? At paano nila, kasi bago ka sumali sa kooperatiba, sasabihin sa'yo, oh, pero i-modernize mo yung jeep mo. Dito mo lang bibilin. So, may mga, 'di ba? Meron ng mga connection sila. So, yun lamang po.
Mr. President, next is Senator Bato de la Rosa, Mr. President. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished colleague from the province of Davao del Sur and Mindanao, Senator Bato de la Rosa, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, before I read my manifestation, I just would like to encourage the Chairman of Public Services na sana during her investigation into this issue, establish natin yung sinasabi ni Senator Majority Leader na may mafia na sa likuran nito. Kasi kawawa naman yung mga maliliit na driver natin na mahirap na nga, mamapyahin pa ng sarili niyang gobyerno. Eh kung totoo itong may mafia, dapat malaman natin ito, tulungan natin itong imbestigahan. Para malaman, kasi there seems to be a scheme of everything. Magpamembro ka muna ng kooperatiba, din pagkatapos sa membro, hindi ka magiging membro kapag hindi ka mag-procure yung jeep na modernized jeep. So sana ma-establish natin ito kung sino itong mga mafia na ito. And Mr. President, I stand before you today to join this August chamber in calling the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board to defer the scheduled phase out of all traditional jeepneys by June 30, 2023. The Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program of the Department of Transportation and the LTFRB has the most notable intention, and that is to provide a safe, convenient, contemporary, and state-of-the-art public transportation system. We in the government are doing our best to provide the riding public a hassle-free public transportation experience. However, we should be realistic in fulfilling this dream and acknowledge the difficulties that lie ahead. Ginoong Pangulo, kaisa po ninyo ako sa paghangad ng modernong pamamaraan at palakad ng pampublikong transportasyon. Ngunit, kailangan natin isalang-alang ang limitasyon at hirap na hinaharap ng mga driver na mga tradisyonal na jeepneys na namamayagpag sa ating mga daan sa maraming dekada na nakalipas. Traditional jeepneys, otherwise known as the king of the roads, have been the significant symbol of our busy streets in Manila. Even in the provinces, the size of these iconic commuters to their respective workplaces and to reach their families back home after a day's work. Sa kagustuhan natin na mabigyan ng modernong mukha ang ating mga jeepney sa lansangan, naiisip ba natin ang magugugol na halaga ng mga drivers, operators at maging mga local manufacturers para maisakatuparan ang tinakdang programa ng DOTR at LTFRB para sa modernisasyon ng publikong sasakyan. Hirap. Nagkabulol-bulol tuloy ako to. We in the Senate are not insensitive to the plight of our drivers, operators, and local manufacturers. With the economic crisis brought by the pandemic, the transportation sector suffered much from the economic losses brought by COVID-19. With this in mind, utmost consideration, therefore, should be the burden that we pass on to our partners in the public transportation sector. Hence, I add my voice in appealing to the LTFRB to give more time